Life has always been considered to be difficult, but people are always moving forward. Maybe it's because tomorrow has a better future. One should avoid walking with the hope that it won't come true. Remember, only a strong will can create the future. Abruptly, a blue-haired boy is being chased by 4 creepy-looking monsters. The monsters were growling, and they intended to kill the little boy. He knew that this was going to be risky, but he didn't expect that it would be like this at the end. This boy had already made a firm decision that if he got past this, he was going to take one step further. It was now time to start attacking the monsters, and this blue-haired boy removed a sharp dagger, and within a second he attacked the monster that was right behind him. Now there were 3 more left. It was hard to fight monsters, but it was one of the only ways to gauge his potential, and people often thought that it was pretty crazy to do so. This boy knew that it would be hard to get away and that it might be dangerous too. But if a person wants to live, they have to risk their lives sometimes. He had escaped many a times before with the dagger throw that he learned while in the army. Moreover, he had been training alone for a long time so that he could go out into the world. With one more dagger hit, another monster meets its end. Now there are 2 more to go. He knew it was his last chance, and in one go, he planned to kill the remaining 2. He threw the dagger and waited for the results. Oh no, one of the monsters came flying at him, but luckily it was just a corpse. What a relief. Even at this rate, he couldn't feel anything. But then, if he didn't do such crazy stuff, his heart would be so empty that he wouldn't be able to stand it. He knew that he was sooner or later going to be a shell of himself. This guy had plans, so he decided that he wouldn't hesitate anymore as he was finally going to leave this place. And the reason he made this decision is solely because he remembers everything about his past life. He has given it a lot of thought, but no matter what, he could figure things out. He often wondered how he died and why he remembered his past life, but things were quite hazy. But that was not the only problem. It had been 16 years in this reincarnated world, and he remembered the past 28 years of his previous life. So he has been living with the mind of a 28-year-old since his reincarnation. Dion, the blue-haired boy, finally reaches home. His father greets him and feels kind of proud that his little boy at this age is already capable of hunting down monsters. Their conversation goes on well, but for Dion, this man didn't seem like his real father. Dinner is set on the table, and Dion's mother calls everyone out for dinner. Dion's father's name is Mudo, and his mother's name is Lona. His eldest brother's name is Damon, and he had other siblings too. Dion's siblings were excited for dinner as there was meat too. Mudo and Lona praise Dion, and the family settles down at the table. Amidst this picture of a happy family, the problems were going to start now. Although the whole family was living harmoniously, it simultaneously made Dion feel strange and hesitant. Dion was curious about his past family, his friends, and the lover of his previous life, and so he finally decided to leave here. Dion then declares that he wants to go on a trip. His family gets anxious hearing about this, but his father was willing to listen to his son. Dion was doubtful if his family would understand and bless the path that he was going to take. He tells his dad that he wishes to see a wider world. Dion's siblings think that he's gone crazy. Mudo at last agrees to Dion's final choice because he knows that Dion is unstoppable now. This kid was not an ordinary one, so Mudo respected his choice and allowed him to go on this trip. Lona tries to oppose the idea, but all in vain. The next day, Dion plans to leave by saying goodbye, but his father comes to see him off. Mudo gives him a pendant and tells him that if he ever enters the Rasahin kingdom, he should find Dolomich in the Flairon Tower. If this man is still alive, he will definitely help Dion. As soon as Dion leaves, Lona seems to be extremely worried about him. Dion arrives, and all the travelers are ready to set off towards their destinations. He meets a wizard there and manages to get himself a seat in the carriage. This is when Dion encounters magic, and he's amazed by it. This little boy is determined to move forward, regardless of how difficult the path is. Dion finally leaves his hometown and sets out on this journey to find himself. Dion was seated in the carriage, and the others kept discussing about their destinations. Among these people there were merchants, wizards, mercenaries, and most importantly there were people guarding the top part. The best part of such a trip was that it was always exciting, and wherever one goes, there's always freshness. For these people, travel had a different meaning, but Dion could feel anything and wondered if he was weird. Dion was surrounded by people who had dreams. Of course, life wasn't that bad, but Dion didn't know what to do with his life, as he had left home with no idea. Everything is reborn after death, and after living for 16 years, and he still had no emotions. Dion had achieved a lot in his previous life, and he was in a state of chaos with those mere memories. He felt incomplete. A huge hole had formed in his heart. Sometimes Dion felt stupid enough to keep thinking about this, but now that he's living this life, he need not limit himself to one thing, so he decides to find something to fill the void. Dion had spotted people moving out the wagon out of the tent, and he questioned a man about it. He explained to Dion about the invasions by monsters and marauders. In an emergency, they use a cart as a shield to fight, and it felt like a siege. He then tells Dion to get some rest, and Dion thanks him for his hard work. The people here were indeed wiser than Dion actually thought, so that's the way one needs to learn to survive. Dion gazes at the wizard's tent, but he is helpless and decides that one day he'll definitely inquire more about magic. Later, at night, the people set up a bonfire, and the others were resting in their tents. Dion was in deep sleep when he was abruptly woken up by some kind of human form. This scared the shit out of him, and he wondered if it was a ghost or something. But he then realized that there was magic, so he ruled out the possibility of that thing being a ghost. Unexpectedly, the same figure appears again, and this time Dion notices that it's not a ghost but a fairy. He was completely mesmerized by magic. Dion holds the little fairy in his hand and admires her. The fairy gestures for him to come closer to her, and she directly kisses Dion on the lips. The fairy seems to be proud of her achievement, whereas Dion gets zoned out. It has been a while since Dion went on a trip, and he's going through a lot. Damn, this world is really full of amazing things. This little fairy jumps and pops around Dion, and she tries to tell him something, but they fail to connect. Dion concludes that the fairy's actions must definitely have a meaning. But before he could understand, the fairy disappeared. He found it disappointing, as he wished he could talk to her. And the very next moment, the fairy reappears, and this time she also brings her friends along. These fairies moved around him, and Dion had some weird feelings about it. Dion was aware of the fact that they live in a different place from humans, and the conversation with them should be between mind and heart. He closes his eyes and hears the name Sylph. The people outside were witnessing a sandstorm, and one of them declared that it was a monster attack. All of them are alarmed about it, and they get ready for the battle. The wizards and mercenaries are called out, and the merchants are asked to protect their luggage. As for the travelers, they are told to stay out of it and be safe. Dion all of a sudden wakes up from his sleep, and he is confused about what just happened. Apparently, he had seen fairies and even heard their names, but he doesn't know whether it was just a dream or not. Dion's train of thought instantly breaks as he hears the screams from outside. He also hears his fellow travelers speaking about some monsters. He tries to go out to check out the situation, but those people stop him as it's quite dangerous outside. They suggest that he go somewhere and hide instead. As soon as Dion comes out, he notices that there's tension in the air, and he decides to observe everything carefully. The wizards are all in action mode, and Dion spots that there's a girl too, and she's small. He wonders what kind of abilities she has. Someone informs them that the monster is Hasax. Then they get to know that the scouts have been attacked by Hasax, and now they have to rearrange the formation. Next, the priests decide to help them out and bless the fighters with divine power. They were happy to know that they had wizards and priests supporting them. The divine power was the power of God, and that meant that they would win. The place is in total havoc due to the sudden attack of the monsters, and soon the defense breaks out. There were too many of them, and they had to stop the monsters anyway. The fighters yell at the monsters, cursing them to die. Then the archers are commanded to shoot their arrows, and the ones with shields are reallocated. Dion stood there in utter shock and wondered if this was the part of the world he didn't know about. Even if he didn't look at it, he could feel everything around him intensely. The wizards finally come to their rescue, and they start discussing about their next step. Soon, the wizards began organizing their powers. The flame burns up, the wind blows out, and the little girl named Linen completes the order by amplifying the gathered power and increasing its strength. They sent out a flame of destruction, and it helped destroy the monsters in one go. The crowd happily cheers and claims that magic is the best. With magic, they have hopes that they can win. Dion observed things and wondered if this was the real magic power. He couldn't believe that something amazing like this was possible. He had some constant feelings, and they were related to the hole in his heart. Suddenly, Dion hears someone screaming for help. The monster Hasax was about to attack a boy, and he shut his eyes in fear. Seconds before the monster could attack him, the monster was killed. The battle wasn't over yet, so they had to watch out. This boy thanks the one who saved his life, and it's none other than Dion. He knew that this was the other area at the top, and it was still dangerous here, unlike the other area where the wizards had already won the battle. After Dion saves the life of this boy and tells him to hurry up and hide somewhere as the battle is not over yet, Dion reflects on the weird thing that happened when he threw the dagger. It penetrated the thick shell of the hassocks, so he wondered how he had so much power. Dion could use an aura, but he cuts to the chase, and instead of thinking about that right now, he quickly decides to do whatever he can. He planned on testing his abilities here, but first, he needs to take care of the remaining ones on the perimeter and mainly focus on hassocks. Dion throws the daggers and experiences something unbelievable. Moreover, there's this creepy mist around his hands. The others who witnessed his skills praised Dion, as he was pretty good at it as he managed to pierce Hassak's upper portion with a dagger. For them, he was just amazing, and they even asked Dion to take good care of them. With the support of magicians and the struggle of mercenaries, the remaining Hassaks were successfully wiped out, and the battle that night lasted almost all night and came to an end at dawn. The next morning, the boss distributed payments as per the deeds done last night, and people stood there bargaining. It was Dion's first time experiencing all this. More terrifying than the war was the aftermath. They had to bury the dead comrades who were in a team together. They took all their belongings and dealt with the deaths of their colleagues. Pity them, as it was the same life for them every day. For Dion, it was his first time experiencing the lives of these mercenaries, but he didn't feel any kind of agitation. Well, he knew that he was like this, and he should give himself some time as this was just the beginning. Meanwhile, he didn't notice Linen, who was standing beside him, and he got scared. But then he looks at her again and finds that she's as pretty as a celebrity. Linen approaches Dion and asks about his name. Dion asks her if she's a wizard. Linen doesn't answer his question and asks him to come with her. Dion soon realizes that it's the tent of the wizards, and an old man is waiting for him. He was the same man who had helped Dion get a seat in the carriage. This old man called for Dion because of the Hassaks he had caught. He wanted to settle the business between them. Dion had caught about 14 monsters, and so his share accounted for 5 gold coins. Here, the price was low, but for Dion, that's enough money for his family to live for 3 months. The old man thought that Dion was disappointed with the low price and apologized because the mercenaries were greedy. Dion, on the other hand, thanks the old man for his consideration with a damn straight face. This oldie was delighted to see someone without greed. He knew that it was Dion's first trip, and Dion told him that he wanted to see the world. The old man wonders if either this boy is a real idiot or he would be a great hero. Anyway, if it was meant to be, they would meet again. Dion leaves the tent, and on his way back, he wonders if he really did well. He felt nostalgic, as this place was not different from the sky and stars of his past life. They finally gather, and now they cheer up and move to another town. The journey continues, and people are still dying, but it doesn't make any difference. This was life. Since then, several battles have continued where they fought bandits and a group of goblins. It was a journey where death was very near, so it was eerie. Some good things happened too. Dion became friends with mercenaries because he helped in many battles, but he was also hated as their shares were reduced. But again, it didn't matter because it isn't possible to be in everyone's good books. Speaking about money, it was no different from his previous life. Money is important anywhere and everywhere. The equipment here was very expensive, so it was suitable to be a wizard or a retainer to earn more. Abruptly, this bright greenish light shines again, and Dion knows that it's the fairies. He had seen them after that day, and it was a strange experience. He still remembers the name of that cute fairy who's called Sylph. Dion was sure that he'd been connected to these spirits, and he felt like he could see more spirits in the future. He wondered if there was any way to find out about these spirits. Coincidentally, there were wizards and priests in the party, but he was curious to know more about that wizard girl. Dion was hopeful of getting some help from her, but it looked harder to talk to her than he thought. Now this was on his priority list when he got to the next town. Dion bids goodbye to those little spirits and leaves the town. The travelers reach the next town, and Dion keeps looking out for Linen. Now they were only a few days away from arriving at Holton. He couldn't even go to meet her personally, as others could easily misunderstand him. Dion thinks that it would be better if he tried to find out about it in Holton, but he wasn't ready to give up like this. Another thought that struck his mind was about the expensive equipment. He now had only 5 golds left from the battle. Dion finally understood why the mercenaries were so greedy about money. When they said the equipment was expensive, they were not kidding. It was indeed expensive. A few years' worth of living expenses just disappeared into thin air. After pondering for a while, Dion spots Linen, who is buying some bread. He immediately goes behind her and stops her. Dion formally greets her, and she directly asks him what happened. Her reply was really short. He asks Linen if she doesn't mind if he wants to talk to her for a second. Yes, she agreed. And as expected, her words were too short. Dion noted that he didn't beat around the bush, and he directly asked her if she knew anything about spirits. Lennon gives him an address, directing him towards Haydn's morning beer, room 502, Garden. There were some key figures at the top who were staying there. Dion thanks her for the information and asks for her name. She tells him that she's Lennon, and she walks away. Well, there was actually another person as strange as Dion. Next, Dion goes to Haydn's morning beer and meets Garden. This man answers Dion's questions. He tells Dion that magic is not that simple. There were too many things to prepare, and there's a magic combination among them. Garden asks Dion about how many magic combinations he could combine, as that's the measure of a strong wizard. Dion was kind of familiar with these combinations, as he had seen them in the previous battle. If one could combine 3 types of magic, then that person would be called a wizard. What Dion saw that day was only a mere glimpse. The explanation given by this man made him understand the system roughly. The Garden then asks Dion about Lennon. He thought Dion would be scared because Lennon was a wizard, but he couldn't detect any fear. He praises Dion for his great courage and dagger skills. Everyone was avoiding Lennon, and Dion couldn't understand the reason behind it. Then Garden asked him about why he wanted to know about spirits. These days, the number of spirits has decreased dramatically, and everyone thinks it's quite strange. Dion tells him that he's heard a lot about spirits in the village, and it's as amazing as magic. Garden tells him that there were spirits in the countryside, but he didn't expect such an answer. As such, Dion wasn't sure of what he meant, and even Garden told him that there wasn't any meaning as everyone has their own story. This man finally comes back to the main topic, which is spirits. He decides to take it slow and asks Dion if he knows anything about spirits. Dion freshens up and gives serious thought to the conversation he had with Garden. The spirit god created spirits to organize and maintain the world. In other words, the world is not sustainable without spirit. He now knows that it's the spirit that is a friendly being, and spirit and divine power are different from each other, so they don't blend together. The only thing that he had to be careful about was overdoing it. If he did, bang, he would explode with a bang, just as Garden said. The source of everything is mana. One needs to turn it into magical or elemental power. Furthermore, Dion also heard that a spirit mage was quite valuable, and depending on the person one is friendly with, they'll be the right spirit man. Those fairies reappeared again. There was definitely a reason that Dion was able to see them. He was also curious about the decrease in the number of spirits. He then notices a spirit with light brown hair. Dion was seeing her for the first time, and judging by her appearance, it was likely the spirit of the earth. Dion decides to stop thinking about it and falls asleep. Since that day, his worries about mana have deepened. Dion felt both divine power as well as magical power. In order to become an elementalist, he had to gather that energy. The travelers set out on their journey while discussing about the eventful trip. After a while, they finally reached their destination, Holton. As soon as the carriages enter the town of Holton, the guards begin to check the travelers' IDs. Dion greets the guard and completes the process. The guards finally open the gates, and the carriages are allowed to move forward. Now they had to say goodbye to their fellow travelers, and that was kind of the hardest part here. Dion had his own plans, and he also received an introduction letter from a merchant in the village before he arrived. He plans to leave first, as he doesn't have much luggage. Dion thanks the others for whatever they have done for him, and he leaves. As soon as he turns around, he spots the wizards, and he gazes at Lennon. Simultaneously, she turns around, and their eyes meet. It looks like Dion was trying to say goodbye to her. He then just turns away and leaves. Meet this animal. Its name is Torox. It's a bird that looks like a mixture of a duck and a chicken based on its previous life. Torox has a higher population than chickens, and it's edible. This rented house is also raising Torox for food purposes, but there's one major issue with this breed. Torox keeps clucking and crying. Dion feels like he'll lose his mind every morning. Raising a bird that cries at the same time every day was too much. It indeed had a terrible sound. Dion, on the other hand, didn't realize that there were clocks in this world too. Moreover, there was a god of time and a church that worshipped this god. He wasn't sure, but he thinks it was a penton. Another thing he learned is that in this world, a day is 26 hours long. It's already been over a month since Dion came to Holton, and now he's going to start another day. After signing up for a house, Dion started working as a housekeeper at a bakery. He was fine with this chilly weather, and he needed to hurry up. It's been about 3 weeks since he worked, and he's kind of satisfied. Dion heads to pull out water from the well, where he meets the spirits. He politely greets them. Dion felt bizarre, but as expected, he could now see more spirits. Here, there wasn't much work to do, so he started by boiling the water. He needed to get more firewood, and there were more things to be done. Dion notices that the spirits are waiting for them and are trying to light a fire. But fortunately, the fire was still alive, so Dion only needed to add the firewood. He addresses the spirits and asks them to wait, as he is about to make a big fire soon. But the spirits do it, and their firepower is no joke. Dion has to get ready and go out, so he checks on the firewood and requests the spirits to take care of the rest. Holton is divided into a total of 8 districts. Among them, the bakery is located in Dongmun District. This is where Dion was hired as a new employee 3 weeks ago. Dion enters the bakery and greets his boss. His boss asks Dion to quickly check the stock today. Dion's boss was fascinated by Dion's aqua-colored hair and mysterious aura. His strange appearance makes Dion seem like an aristocrat's son. When Dion first visited and told this man that he was a wanderer, this man was reluctant to hire him. Furthermore, Dion even brought a letter of introduction with him. Just then, this man's daughter showed up, and boom, this girl was captivated by Dion. When she saw Dion's face, she immediately recommended her father hire him. So this man had no choice but to hire him. After receiving a greeting from Dion, this girl started blushing, and her father was a bit dissatisfied with his daughter's choice. On the second thought, hiring Dion was indeed a good decision. He was sincere, and he has very unique ideas. Dion contributed to some amazing recipes, such as a bread called saburo using sugar, mocha bread with black beans, and bread made from chestnuts and pine nuts. Thanks to Dion, the store's sales increased by 30%. Dion's boss asks him if he is done with the inventory work. Dion informs him that they had 12 bags of flour in the storage room and that one turret was in use. After rechecking with Dion, the boss declares that tomorrow is a holiday for him, and he can go home early and rest. Dion thanks his boss after making sure that he's really got a holiday, and wishes him a nice weekend. Dion has been so busy these days, but now he could finally do what he had planned. Dion was in search of a building, and he finally even noticed that it was right in front of him. He then decides to get into the building. Dion enters the bookstore, and the atmosphere is quite fine. The bookstore manager welcomes Dion, and they exchange greetings. Dion tells him that he is looking for a book about elementals and spiritists. The manager asks Dion whether he wants a book about legends or an introductory book on how to become a spiritualist. That was a straightforward question, so Dion requested the man show him all the related books, and he would choose after looking at them. The manager makes it clear that these books are very precious, and that these books were used ones. He then shows Dion his collection, which is well organized. Dion starts taking a look at those books, and among them he finds a book called Introduction to Spirits. It was kind of attracting Dion towards it, and he decided to begin this book. Dion heads towards the counter and tells the manager that he'll take this book. Though these books were used, they were expensive because there were only a few items for sale. This man undoubtedly knows how to do some good business. The bookstore manager had this feeling that Dion was going to become a regular customer, so he settled on giving him this book for 40 silver. Dion begins to read the book as soon as he gets home. He soon learns about the spirits that manage the basic elements that make up the world and their concept, which is similar to that of angels. The preface of this book and the content gave him the summarized information about the methods of spirituality and initiation rituals. In short, it was a good theory book, but Dion desired more details. He concluded that the only way to develop spirit power is mana and that he has to collect mana. The next day, Dion goes back to the well, and there he again meets the little spirit. He greets her, but he still can't hear her speak. For Dion, greeting the spirits seems to have become a daily routine. He thinks about doing the contract ritual that he saw in the book, and maybe then they could talk freely. Dion gazes at the little spirit, and he shows his palm to her. He mutters about the consciousness of the contract. This is a word of oath from time immemorial. Dion introduces himself and asks the spirit to tell him her name. The adorable little spirit holds Dion's finger in her small hands, and the very next moment she bites his finger. Dion screams in pain. Of course he was expecting something like this. Seeing a spirit doesn't mean that he's incredibly special, and he couldn't believe that he thought it was something like a novel. Dion was pretty childish, but anyway, humans are contradictory and diverse in this way. On his way back, Dion gets this weird, similar feeling, but it is different from when he met Sylph. Dion could hear some sounds and see a video. Hang on, that's not a video. It is actually a memory. The memory of something other than humans. Next, he sees fire, and the fire is growing. Dion feels like he is getting burned by the fire and has been turned into ashes. He wondered if he had practiced the wrong ritual. Dion soon realizes that he's wrong, as this is not a punishment. He could feel everything in nature that makes up the world. He was one of them now. Dion kept wondering where exactly he was now. Dion felt like his body was breaking apart again. He wondered if he was going to disappear like this. He wasn't even greedy enough to keep going. Now that it's like this, Dion wants to rest forever. That's when the spirits came to rescue him. Soon, Dion's broken body begins to regenerate, and he meets the little spirit again. This time, Dion can hear her talk. She tells Dion that her name is Undyne, and she even knows that his name is Dion. This was amazing. They could talk to each other now. So according to the contract of the elements, they are one now. They are the ones who split the soul until the soul dies. After a while, Dion regains his consciousness, and now he is sure that he doesn't want to do this again. He just blurted out the contract order out of curiosity, but he couldn't believe that something really happened. Besides, it was not like a martial arts novel. This was purely his fault. Undyne calls out for Dion, and she's all cute and shining. Undyne then hugs Dion, and he wonders if the contact really worked, as he can now hear the voice of a spirit. Undyne was gleaming with happiness, and she declared that from now on she'd be with Dion. He was indeed grateful. Dion could feel it. This small spirit was now connected to him. It's a feeling he has never felt before, and Dion was happy. This is what connecting of hearts is like. Dion gets back to work and checks on the stock. He then goes in to eat something. Undyne continuously follows Dion. It's been months since he has been living with Undyne. This meant that it had also been a long time since he'd lived in Holton. Undyne happily points out towards her head and asks Dion to pat her. Damn, she's so cute. Undyne likes Dion to pat her on the head, and he took a break to keep patting her. Dion was curious about one thing because he had never seen Undyne eat anything. Undyne tells him that, of course, she could eat. Undyne loved spirit stones and told Dion that they were delicious. Dion had read something about spirit stones in the book, and he knew they were very expensive. Besides, he didn't even know if he had spirit power. Usually spirits have the concept of being summoned, but he didn't know because Undyne had been summoned for a legit 26 hours. First things first, since Undyne said she could eat, Dion was willing to try finding a spirit stone soon, and Undyne was extremely impressed that Dion now cared for her. When Dion gets another holiday, he decides to roam around and find out some more details. Undyne looked very happy today, so Dion wanted to get a spirit stone as soon as possible, but he didn't know how much it would cost. Besides, his financial situation is not worth mentioning right now. Moreover, Dion was also running out of money to buy books, and the next book costs 4 gold, which was too much to buy on the bakery's payroll. Dion had to find another way now. So Dion tries to test Undyne and asks her if there is anything that she could do with water. Undyne takes the bottle of water in her hands, and the lid opens up. Next, magic happens, and now this material certainly looks different from normal water. Dion wasn't sure if he would get hurt if he got hit by the water at this speed. He feels sorry for Undyne, and she's really useless. After thinking about it, they concluded that it could be used to drown the opponent. In addition, Dion was still practicing how to throw daggers, and he also collected information about the surrounding topography. Holton was surely big, and Dion also collected specific information about wizards. His current life seemed like a fantasy novel. Dion had to study the other territories as well because he was always thinking of leaving Holton. He finally arrives at a place that looks kind of scary, as it's a remote area more like a slum. According to the map, a mercenary guild should be here. While searching for it, Dion comes across a battle between the mercenaries. A man was yelling and calling out to his enemies. He wanted to fight those sons of bitches who were acting like parasites. Just then, a calm voice asked this man if it was his specialty to fight with his mouth. Hearing this man gets extremely furious. Now he and his gang were ready to kill. That's when they again hear the voice that talks about the assaulting and threatening of civilians. He refers to those mercenaries as gangsters. This man finally reveals himself, and he actually doesn't want to fight but still taunts the gang members by saying that they shouldn't talk like that in a crowd because they look so pathetic. The gang had come prepared for a fight, no matter what. They claimed that this area belonged to them and that no one had the right to speak. They blame him, saying that he has messed with the wrong people. This man, who was dressed neatly like a noble, held them guilty for ruining the district after harassing the civilians, and he continued to provoke the gang about the fight. According to the others, the people in the gang were not mercenaries. They were no different than thugs, and they were now worried for this person who stood there alone. The gang decides to attack the man and swears to kill him right away. Dion couldn't believe what he was seeing. He knew that the mercenaries were rough, but this was too much. That's when Undyne flies a bit higher, as if she were preparing to show off her powers. This guy was busy fighting with the gang alone, and he also claimed that their standards were quite low. 2 more guys came from behind, and the gang was sure that this lonely warrior wasn't capable of avoiding this attack. Dion was shocked and wondered if they were really going to kill him, who was fighting against absurdity. It was just cruel and unfair. The lonely warrior knocks off a few gang members, and he also notices the ones that came from behind, as though he had already expected this. The very next moment, the gang members were attacked by some unpleasant water spheres. This man was doubtful if this attack included magic. Of course, this was done by Undyne, but Dion couldn't believe that she had this kind of power. Moreover, after all this, Dion felt so relieved. Totally strange. This warrior guy approaches Dion and confirms that he was the one who helped him. He also knew that the power belongs to the spirit. This guy was thankful for Dion's help. Dion looks at him weirdly and tells him that he just did the right thing. This guy noticed Dion's face and found things interesting. On the other hand, Dion couldn't understand why he really wanted to help this guy and why he felt so relieved. The warrior then formally introduces himself as Insirian and informs Dion that he'll be in Holton for a while. If anything goes wrong, Dion can feel free to contact him through the warrior's mercenary group. Dion thanks him with due respect, and Insirian leaves. He also reminds Dion not to give him that look next time. Damn, those eyes. Dion tried to save Insirian unconsciously, and Undyne has responded to his will. And he couldn't deny that it was indeed a powerful way to use water. By using his memory, he observes that her power adds rotation to the water pressure, and as expected, it's very destructive. If Undyne was really able to follow his will, there were many ways that they could use this in the future. Dion decides to experiment with it right now, and Undyne is ready for it. They repeat this process again, and boom, it's working. This water power is insane. The high-pressure stream pierced the rock, and it's marvelous. Undyne asks Dion for his approval, and he pats her on the head and praises her. Dion then asks Undyne if she has any other abilities related to healing or recovery. Undyne is a water spirit, and she knew how to use water. Water is often associated with the mage of healing and purification, and Dion wondered why Undyne didn't know about it because she is still immature. Dion wished that he could get more information, as there were so many things he didn't know yet. Dion then remembers about Insirian, and if he knew about spirits, then even wizards and priests would know about them. In search of answers, Dion reaches the mercenary guild. He covers his mouth due to the strong stench, and that's when Undyne purifies the air, and Dion is amazed by her power. Undyne asks Dion to keep complimenting her, and he promises to do it when they get home. They get in to find Insirian, and Dion notes that the atmosphere is fierce. There's this huge guy at the counter who calls out to Dion, treats him like a kid, and asks him if he came in here without knowing what place this was. Dion boldly tells this huge man that he's come here to find someone. This man wonders if this kid didn't hear him and asks him if he knows where this is. Dion tells him that he knows that this is a mercenary guild and that he is looking for a mercenary named Insirian. This man was all set to yell at Dion, but then he stops as he realizes that this kid is actually looking for Insirian. He inquires about Dion and asks him if he knew Insirian well. Dion tells him that Insirian told him to come and find him, and the man was amazed by this kid as he has great connections with the warrior's mercenaries. He finally informs Dion that Insirian is located in the Queen's Tiers in the northern door, and he even draws a map for Dion. Dion is grateful and gives him a tip. This guy now knew that Dion is definitely not a kid, and he promised that he would welcome him kindly next time. He also introduces himself as Nohan. Dion leaves the place and heads towards the given destination. He notices that there are many wealthy people living in the north. In other words, it is quite difficult to use the inn called Tears of the Queen if one has been crying because of being broke in terms of financial resources. Dion also observed that the warriors' mercenaries had good skills and were mercenaries with a lot of money. He arrives at the inn, and damn, this is a fucking castle. As soon as Dion tries to enter, he is stopped by the guards, as no one can enter this place without permission. Dion informs the guard that he has come to see Insirian of the warriors' mercenary corps. The guards didn't want to believe him, as they thought that this kid was lying and that he spoke so recklessly. Aw shit, here we go again. That's when Dion decides to show off his power, which is magic without a spell. The guards immediately understood that he was a spirit user. Dion now requests that they contact Insirian, and they quickly agree. Sometimes it's necessary to use force, as it is human nature to be helpless in the face of strong power. One of the guards asks Dion to come in. The warriors' mercenary corps is a small number of A-class mercenaries, but in reality they are not mercenaries, they are adventurers. However, they also said that they were working as mercenaries because they didn't make much money. The warriors were busy discussing about some clues that they had found. Bendrick confirms that he's sure about the clue, as this information was obtained from the Brother of Darkness, and he had also spent a lot of money. The green-haired wizard exclaims that money doesn't matter to them and that trusted information is more important than money. Her name is Intellect. She reminds the others that we are adventurers. Warrior Cylon supports her statement and adds to it, saying that they are adventurers before they are mercenaries. He even agrees to fight it out, as they were good enough. Cylon asks Harrian about what she was thinking. Harrian clarifies that if he's asking for her opinion, then her answer will be the same, as she just follows God's will. Harrian is Hadalaward's priest. Cylon knew it was his fault, and the others were sure that he was really stupid. By that time, a guard comes to inform Syrian Nim that he has a visitor, and Syrian guessed that it must be the spirit user, so he ordered the man to bring their guest in. Cylon seemed to be excited to meet the man who boldly helped Syrian. Intellect knew that the opportunity to see a spirit user was not common. She suggests that nobody should act rashly, as the spirit user was at least at an intermediate level. They eagerly wait for this spirit user guy to enter, and then Dion enters and greets them. Dion informs them that he has come here to seek help. The warriors didn't expect a kid to be a spirit user, and they were all thrilled to meet him. Dion introduces himself and explains to them the situation wherein he happened to sign a contract with the spirit of water, but he didn't know what spirit magic or spirit spells were. He makes them aware that a spirit of water is currently next to him, and he requests politely that they teach him if they have any insight related to this. Cylon, out of nowhere, begins to laugh as he finds Dion quite funny. He asks Dion if he wants to become strong or if he wants to make a name for himself after learning about spiritism. Dion proudly tells him that he wants to find himself and his identity, and he also wants to test his potential. Everyone has their own perception as soon as they hear Dion's answers. Cylon immediately likes him and decides to drop the honorific since he is older. Dion asks him his name, and then he declares that he'll call him Cylon Hyung. After the naming ceremony was done, Syrian wanted to get down to business. Dion was here to find out all about the spirit's history. Meanwhile, Bendrick comes forward and claims that their little guest is so unique. He was happy to meet Dion. He introduces himself to Dion as the guardian of darkness and dawn, the friend of moonlight. So now they could talk comfortably. Bendrick introduces himself because he feels that Dion wants to know more about him. He tells Dion that he is a friend of the moonlight, the leader of his brothers who love darkness, and a guy who wanders around looking for peaceful sleep. It was indeed a long, grotesque way of speaking, but Dion couldn't deny that he has a good voice and could actually be a great singer. Bendrick then asks Dion where he came from, and interestingly, Dion starts singing too. He had to deal with this guy in a similar way. In short, Dion came from a comparatively small place. Bendrick is instantly impressed by him because of his talent. Next, Intellect comes to end their joke, and she's quite confident that she can answer Dion's question. She briefly introduces herself and asks Dion to call her Telly. She reminds Syrian about their friendship and willingly helps Dion as a gift to a friend. Telly asks Dion what he exactly wants to know. Dion tells her that he wants to know everything about spirits, and to be exact, he wants to know how to use spirits. Telly could, of course, feel the spirit, but she couldn't see it, and she knew it would be hard to find the details. Telly then mutters under her breath, asking the door that is looked at in the darkness to open with the authority of its master. The door opens up and guides them. Telly gets a hold of a thick book and hands it over to Dion. The title of the book is Mother Nature of Spirit Magic. She informs Dion that now the legacy of the Magic City has been scattered. There was everything, including intermediate level spirits, in this book. Dion looks happy and he thanks Telly. Cylon reminds Dion to find him if anything happens later, and he promises to take care of it. Dion then thanks everyone and leaves. After getting back, both Dion and Undyne carefully read the book, which says that a water spirit has 3 abilities: attack, purification, and healing. Everything was given in detail about the concepts and creations. They read about healing water, which supplies partial purification, and that a person could recover from some wounds and cure diseases simultaneously. Next, they are ready to give it a try. Dion requests Undyne to create healing water, and the next moment, it's happening. It's pure magic. It's done. The healing water was created. Now it was time to give it a test. Dion makes a cut on his palm, and he uses healing water. He pours the healing water on his hand, and the wound starts healing. That is simply outrageous. Dion wondered if this water was a potion and if it even had purification power. He thought of it as a scam. He found it hard to believe. Dion soon searched for the concept of connecting minds, but there was nothing about it. Maybe he acquired this ability through reincarnation. At times, he thought about his nonsensical thoughts. Reincarnation was not a big deal anyway, but it was a bittersweet experience. Dion, on the other hand, was glad that he found out about it, as he was going to quit his job. It was now time to carry out plans for the future. Dion puts his plan into action, and soon people gather around to see what exactly was going on. Some joked about him selling water, whereas others were astonished to see that the water was moving. They spotted a wizard, but the crowd soon recognizes Dion, who previously worked in the bakery. They call him a spirit sage, and he makes things a little more fancy with Song of Water. Here, the water is moving like a song. Meanwhile, a man claims that there is no spirit sage in Holton. They recognize each other, and Dion knew that this man was Nohan. Dion explains that he is selling the water of life, and Nohan argues with him, saying that he has never ever heard of such a thing. Nohan even calls him a scammer, and so Dion challenges him to try it out as it was free for all guests today. Many of them wanted to try the water of life and find out what the hell it is. Nohan found it crazy to believe that the healing water cures disease, restores strength, and heals wounds. He wasn't ready to believe Dion and yelled at the boy, saying that he should stop lying in public. The crowd began gossiping about the matter and comparing the healing water to different potions. Nohan then accepts the challenge and announces that he'll drink the healing water himself and prove to others that this boy is lying. Dion and Undyne carefully create the healing water and present it in front of Nohan, and now he has to drink it. Dion knew that Nohan drinks a lot, and he claims that Nohan will sober up right away. This was an actual demonstration given to the people. Dion seemed to be quite confident, but Nohan was determined to prove to the world that it was nothing but this kid's empty lie. Nohan drinks the glass of water, and initially it feels really like normal water. He apologizes for this epic disappointment and announces that this water of life is totally. Wait, something was happening to him. Nohan suddenly feels like his body is energized. The people gathered were thrilled to see a blue light all over Nohan's body. No one could really feel the refreshment that came later. In addition, he felt comfortable inside and all the alcohol he drank last night also disappeared. Boom, the healing water was actually working. Next, someone taps on Dion's shoulder from behind and asks the cost of a glass of the water of life. Dion tells them that it costs 20 copper coins per glass, and as today is the first day, it's free. The price set by Dion was really cheap, and it was even cheaper than alcohol. A group of people rushed towards Dion to buy the healing water. Dion has always thought about leaving Holton, but contrary to the plan, the season changed and healing water sales were steadily booming. Dion continues to sell the water of life, and he gets all kinds of positive reviews wherein people say that they have been cured due to the water of life. People were now grateful for the creation of healing water. One of Dion's customers advises him to take a rest and not overdo anything. Two men stood behind the crowd and discussed about this water of life. They didn't care about his spirit mage level. Moreover, it didn't make sense to sell healing water almost non-stop for months. According to the information, if one uses spirit power like this, they won't be able to handle it. For them, it was hard to believe that there was a genius spirit mage who suddenly appeared. They plan to report this situation to the Lord, and they go back. After completing their sales, both Dion and Undyne head towards their home. Dion praises Undyne, as she worked hard again today. He also tells her that the cost of treatment at the temple was so high that ordinary people couldn't even afford it. Dion was fortunate, as he hasn't been bothered by the temple yet. Dion was even making money, all thanks to Undyne. He promises that he'll buy a spirit stone with this money. Undyne is so delighted to hear about a spirit stone, and she hugs Dion tightly. They had to go and rest now. Dion kept reading the book that Telly had given him, and according to it, only the contracted spirits could communicate with each other, but Dion is able to communicate with other spirits as well. As soon as he opens the door, the other spirits rush to greet him. But Undyne doesn't seem to be happy about it. She yells at those spirits and reminds them that Dion is her contractor and that everyone should go away. Dion pats Undyne on the head and calms her down. He makes her understand that she shouldn't fight with her friends like this, and Undyne quickly comprehends the situation and apologizes to her friends. Dion was clear about the fact that he and Undyne didn't have a master-servant relationship, but he found that Undyne's behavior was quite difficult. He wondered if this little spirit was jealous. Dion had to do something to try to ease Undyne's mood, so he decides to go and buy a spirit stone for her. The next day, both Dion and Undyne are out together, and Dion is taking Undyne somewhere along with him. Meanwhile, one woman calls out to Dion and addresses him as the Saint of Water. Dion greets Miss Alton and asks her about the title that she used to call him. She tells him that everyone calls Dion that because he is doing some good work. She then removes a box and hands it over to Dion. He had helped her kid, and in return, she offered him the pie that she had made. Miss Alton then bids him goodbye, and he thanks her for the pie. Dion was over the moon as he loved the title, The Saint of Water, but he wasn't sure whether it suited him. So that is it for this video, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. So if you like the video, then hit that like button and leave a comment for the next part. Most important, subscribe and press the bell icon for notification. I will meet you in the new video. Till then, bye.